Hi everyone! I hope you're all having a great week. I had a little bit of a snafu when I started recording my process for this week, and unfortunately, the first 15 minutes plus of footage was very blurry. So instead, I'm starting you off with a little beauty from my yard, and I'll catch you up on my process. Sometimes video recording mistakes are easily fixed and sometimes they're not. So when that happens, I offer myself a little compassion and I find a way to work around it. I'm working on a little watercolor abstract in my Reflections watercolor journal. And I started my process off by basically spritzing my page with some water. And then, much like I'm doing here, I started dabbing in my colors. I posted a video of a similar process a few weeks ago, and I'll include the link to that video in my video description. So far, I've really taken advantage of the fluidity of water to create the shapes that are on my paper. Now, using a flat brush, I'm going to start creating some more specific shapes and patterns. Throughout most of my piece, I'll stick to working with the same colors. Working slowly, it's easier for me to listen to the messages coming to me from my intuition. And in this way, I'm very much feeling my way through the painting process. I've picked up some of the same blue I'm using in my background, and using similar strokes, I'm using my flat brush again to add some of that blue to the stripes that I just created with the Titan Buff. I want to create a different set of patterns, and to do this I'll use Quinacridone Deep Gold, much like the same color that I'm using in the background. In fact, exactly the same color that I'm using in the background, but in a less diluted form so that it can appear darker and offer a different value in my painting. Using the same brush but holding it closer to the end of the handle, I've decided to add a bit of a squiggly line across the center of my painting. After cleaning my brush, I'm now using just plain clean water to start softening some of those edges around the lines. Doing this is really helping to blend that line into my background. I want to create a loopy line in my design, but I'm not ready to commit just yet. So I've decided to first draw it out in pencil, and then once I'm happy with what I've created, if I'm happy with it and I don't feel like I want to change it, I'll come in with my markers. As I'm doing this, I'm holding my pencil very lightly and I'm making sure that I'm not making any hard lines because I want to be able to erase them once I'm done. I like what I've drawn in, so I'm ready to commit, and I've pulled out my markers. When I'm working on watercolor paper, I usually try not to work with markers that have a felt tip. And this is because watercolor paper, of course, is a bit rough and it can really damage my markers. Now, on this specific paper, typically I would like to work with a fountain pen. But for whatever reason, this paper in particular makes the ink bleed when I'm working with my fountain pen. So these markers here that I'm using, which I'll tell you exactly what markers they are in the video description, they don't have that effect, and so I like to work with them for that reason. Now, to protect my markers also from the watercolor, as it's soluble and it may clog my markers, I always keep a piece of paper close by so that I can rub the tip of my marker on that plain piece of paper after I'm done using it on the watercolor. I didn't trace the exact lines that I drew with my pencil, and this is okay. They were only meant to be a guide and not necessarily exactly what I wanted to have on my paper. And if I had tried to trace it, honestly, tracing fine details like that, my hand would have probably been a bit shaky and it wouldn't have looked quite as flowy as I wanted it to look. So I just used those pencil lines as a guide and I followed along, and once I was satisfied with what I put down with my marker, I erased all of the pencil lines. When I'm working intuitively like I am right now, I always find it helpful to move my paper around so that I can see if there are any areas where I'd like to make additions. By happenstance, when I took my brush out of my water container, a drop of colored water fell onto my paper, and I decided to keep it there. That one little drop of water led me to making some other intuitive decisions for my painting. I've pulled up my star gold and I'm going to start adding a little bit of it to this little blob of color. I guess it's not really a perfect circle or anything, but I do feel that it will look very nice with this Quinacridone Deep Gold. And I'll also add some of that blue in the background in that same blob of color because I find that the colors look very nice together. That little drop of color that fell on my paper has been sitting there patiently waiting for me to do something with it, so I'll add a little bit more color to it. For balance, I added a couple more drops of that color on the left side of my painting. Using the same black marker I was working with before, I'm now going to start adding some lines in a repetitive pattern in different areas of my painting. Star Gold is one of my favorite iridescent paints, and for that reason I feel like this painting deserves a little bit more of it. I'm feeling as though my painting could use a little bit more contrast and some darker values. So I've pulled out this TomBow Dual Tip marker and I'm using the brush tip to add a little bit more darkness to my painting. Once I've added a couple more little tiny details, I'm ready to call this painting done. For me, intuitive abstract painting is complete freedom from rules. Though I can't say I'd really ever describe myself as a rebel, I must say I really appreciate not being constrained by rules. What do you enjoy most about the abstract, intuitive, creative process? I always appreciate having a chance to connect with you in the comment section. I'm feeling completely blissed out by this creative process, and I'm definitely going to be doing something like this again. It was very relaxing. I hope I was able to transfer this Zen feeling over to you as well. Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy creating!